Hello. Okay, so let's take a look at black holes for a second and also consider what if that's not what is happening? I'm sorry, what? According to a study that happened at some point, Jupiter is forcing the sun and everything in the galaxy, in this solar system, to be orbiting a co-orbit area which can be described as a blank, just random region of space, like a Lagrange point or something. And literally, we're just all floating around that with mutual pull in all directions, with absolutely no regard of there. We don't consider there being a black hole there because that's not how that works. We consider Lagrange points. We consider commingling gravitational points. So the force of one thing and the force of one thing compensates or cancels each other out so that all of the tug is moving collectively around the axis of what they're already doing. So the sun is doing its own motion through space in a circle similar to everything else in the solar system. And that is determined by the sun, Jupiter, and everything else in the solar system. So we're wobbling through space. And then what if a galaxy is doing the same thing? It just occurred to me. What if a galaxy is in fact not governed by a black hole, but all of the mass of the stars that are in the galaxy? That's weird. That's a concept that doesn't make any sense. We determined that black holes must be in the center of galaxies to hold everything together. But the black hole is not the main source of everything happening in the galaxy. So why do you need a black hole in the first place? Well, calculations can obviously predict that there must be some kind of gravitational thing in the center that is massive, that is the supermassive black hole in the center of our galaxy, for example, and supermassive black hole in the center of other galaxies for other examples, like Andromeda and any other galaxy we notice. But why does there have to be a black hole in the first place, in the center? What if supermassive black holes are just actually the coalition of all the other matter doing a mutual gravitational point in the center, or a mutual area where it's not actually gravitation, it's something else, leading for everything to move around that point, and there is no gravity there. Just like there is no gravity where there is the point of mutual pull based on the sun and Jupiter. What if that's happening anywhere? Everywhere. Everywhere. Um, it's an interesting, odd, ridiculous question that seems to be completely easily disproven because of everything that has already been measured about everything. We already know where things are. But then we look at this and we see some weird thing in the sky and we say black hole because one, not visible, two, distorts light, blocks light, doesn't let light in, Hawking radiation ideas, all of this stuff. Based off math that we have very good confidence in because we have a lot of experience with it being accurate. And that's a good thing. We want math and everything to be accurate, to be able to give us predictions so we can understand all of these things and whatever else. Recently, separate, entire thought process, I was thinking about a time tunnel. Inverting time, twisting it so much with gravitational effects that there is an area of time that you can... Okay. Hate that it does that. What the hell? I'm doing recording, you piece of shit. Anyway, the point is, time tunnel. What is it? The idea that that's a massive area of effect, and so it doesn't make sense that that would be the effect of a black hole. In fact, that's the area of a bubble in space. It doesn't make sense. It's something weird. Something else going on there.
A coin-sized black hole appears before you. Now what? If it had the mass of a 5-gram coin, it would be incredibly tiny, much smaller than an atom.
Yeah.
This miniature black hole would evaporate very rapidly due to Hawking radiation, converting its 5 grams of mass into 450 terajoules of...
I'm sorry, it's a 5-gram mass the size of a coin? I think they mistaken the math there, because a black hole the size of a coin, is that not, like, how big is the size of an Earth-sized black hole? Wouldn't it be a mountainous-sized black hole if it was turned into a coin? A coin-sized black hole has a mass of, like, a lot more than grams. So something's wrong here.
Energy. This results in an explosion larger than the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined.
Yeah, sure. Baka. Yeah, I don't think that's how that works. I'm just gonna be real with you. A 5-gram black hole is the size of a proton, or something like that. And yes, a 5-gram black hole would evaporate really fast because it's got 5 grams in it. But 5 grams, in comparison to the amount of electrons in that space, you're still talking about, if you're working with electrons, which you're probably not, you're probably working with some other matter that is not electrons, something more simple that can actually be compressed in that space, whatever.
In this scenario, you would definitely die. But if the black hole had the diameter of a common coin, then it would actually have slightly more mass than the Earth. This
Fuck off. That's what I just said.
larger black hole would exert a gravitational force quadrillions of times stronger than Earth's. The tidal forces would tear you apart from head to toe, and you'd be sucked into the black hole like spaghetti.
Okay, so speaking of spaghetti, so when I've been talking about the idea of a time vortex, what happens is, or a time tunnel, if you have forward-facing time traversing backwards through time throughout a corridor you artificially created, for example, then anything that is approaching from the edges of that would end up immediately stop going in their forward direction in time and start going in the backward direction in time. Spaghettification. Does that mean that black holes are time vortexes? It would seem not, because they are formed from the destruction of stars. So they can't be time vortexes because they go backwards in time. And so, in order for a time vortex to go backwards in time, there has to be a causal event in the future that would cause the black hole to do things. And we know that if the black hole were to absorb something new and then become bigger, like another black hole or whatever, then clearly it's evolving into the future, not into the past. Can it be both? The answer is no. So a black hole, a time vortex, is not.
also consumed the entire planet until all that was left was a scattered disk of hot rock orbiting the black hole. So not only do you die, but the entire planet gets eaten by the black hole as well. In a nutshell, just try to not get yourself into a situation where a coin-sized black hole appears before you. Now, what? If it had the mass of a 5-gram coin, it would...
If at the mass of a 5-gram black coin... Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, whatever. I don't care. I understand.
Be incredibly tiny, much smaller than an atom.
I did say that it would be a proton. I was right. Before I read it, I was right.
This miniature black hole would evaporate very rapidly due to Hawking radiation.
Here's the thing, right? Black hole gravity and all that stuff with the tiny amount of space and the way that it affects everything, would stuff not also be sucked in? And so it would grow before it evaporates. To grab everything that's nearby. What's the most thing that's nearby? Electromagnetism. What's the other thing that's nearby? Virtual particles. What's the other thing that's nearby? Not enough to actually feed the black hole. It has to be more mass. So let's say you actually touched it. That's a bad idea. Even the tiny coin volume, or the black hole that's having the weight of 5 grams, like that could rip you apart if you touched it.
Converting its 5 grams of mass into 450 terajoules of energy. This results...
Yeah, I don't know about that.
in an explosion larger than the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined.
So, tiny little coin, and they expect it to explode like an atomic bomb. An atomic bomb has a gigantic mass of stuff, radioactive and whatever, and it is on the macro scale. And it has a lot of stuff that can do the interactions and whatever. So what happens with the atomic particle, which is the single proton of a neutron of a black hole that has... Okay, first off, probably because gravity and stuff works at certain scales, certain amounts, smaller scales can't... If you had that kind of black hole, you're probably artificially making it. It's not real otherwise. It does not exist because gravity would not just continue to allow it to exist. Pretty sure it would rip itself apart. I don't think it would explode crazily. It would just fizzle out. But whatever.
In this scenario, you would definitely
The point is, I recently talked about the idea of...
die. But if the black hole had the diameter of a common coin, then it would actually have slightly more mass than the Earth. This...
Yeah, and then you would be spaghettified. So when I talked about...
larger black hole would exert a gravitational force quadrillions of times stronger than Earth's. The tidal forces would tear you apart from head to toe.
So, when I talked about the idea of a time tunnel and how the edges of it, because the front part, the part of you that enters the portal first, is going to start moving backwards in time. If you approach it from the side, depending on the speed of the time in that area of the portal. So, like, the correct way to enter into a time portal tunnel is from the mouth. If you're anywhere along its length, then you're going to end up being spaghettified. In physical space, what would actually cause a time portal to maintain any amount of direction through space? Well, it's how you manipulate space curvature in order to actually achieve a time tunnel. So it would have to exist in actual space. So just surrounded by a bunch of heavy things held apart from each other by bigger things, specific structures that are capable of keeping like giant black holes away from each other. The idea of making a structure like this is ridiculous because matter just doesn't obey those types of rules. So instead, you need other forces that cause gravitational forces that won't allow the black hole to get near that, but there's mutual gravitational effects, so you can't just make a one-sided gravitational effect. So whatever the black hole is doing to the outside, if it can affect the black hole's affecting it. That's how that works for any amount of mass, anywhere, whatever. So in order to make the thing, you have to make a thing that makes the thing do the thing without breaking the thing. And it's really hard to do all of that. But at certain distances, you can exert a certain amount of gravity to hold everything together precisely with structures that once you get closer and closer and closer to the size of like your ship, you'll be able to traverse this time tunnel. It's a region through space that has been warped enough that it actually manipulates space-time, and you're able to transfer through it. You open the mouth, you go through, and you end up in the past. Now, again, if you enter from the side, the part of you that enters first, say your fingertips, your fingernails, or the ends of your hair, would start going backward in time before the rest of you got there. So you would have this problem where you have all of this mass of you separately moving backward in time. So spaghettification. If you're not in the tunnel fast enough, you will spaghettify. If you go in to that small region of space with enough speed and stopping immediately, which is not good for human bodies, you would, but who cares? Let's ignore that part. If you could do it, you could enter at a specific point, start going backward in time, and your body experiences the backward flow of time simultaneously. This is why we have a mouth to the portal. The mouth is where the regular flow of time and the backward flow of the time tunnel travel into each other. So the regular flow of time that you experience is what you experience as you go into the tunnel from that face-on direction. And so you wouldn't spaghettify at that face-on direction. A black hole, however, is just a gravitational anomaly. A time tunnel technically could be a black hole, but a black hole, a time tunnel is not. So it's important to know these things and how that can work. I was like, my first assumption was the size of the coin, and I just misheard, whatever. I don't care. The point is, this helps me with my analogy of spaghettification and stuff. As a part of your body goes, if the rest of it doesn't follow through, you will spaghettify. So that sucks. But if the time was flowing backwards slowly enough, there could be a big enough opening that it doesn't matter where you enter, you're still going to not stretch that far or that much. But here's the thing, if you don't keep up with everything, it's not like lights is stretching, you're physically stretching. Parts of you are moving at different speeds than other parts of you. You're going to rip yourself apart if you don't go in through the opening of the time tunnel. This is very important. If you ever want to do time manipulation, go through the front. Okay. The other thing about this is that you can't just expect yourself to go at any given speed and then also go super far into the past. My usual assessment is that you can't go further back into the past than the creation of the time tunnel itself. So the moment it stops being a traversable pathway, you would just end up on the outside when it was made immediately. So the moment you create it, someone's going to travel through, they're going to end up on the other side, and they will be when it was made, and that's how that works. And it's a one-way trip, and everyone who gets there will traverse this time. And here's the thing, it doesn't matter how many times you use it because all moments in time are progressing from the moment in the now to the moment into the past. So forward through time in a backwardly direction. This is different than you trying to traverse yourself backward in time. So what could happen with that is if you make a region of space where your region of space doesn't experience time the way other space does, then you have cut yourself off from regular space-time. However, the moment you try going backwards, you'll basically be traversing again the space you've already existed in, and so the backwards momentum will force you to bump into yourself. This sucks and is always problematic for anyone who makes a stationary time machine trying to go backward in time. It's really not healthy. Trying to go forward in time doesn't matter as much. Backward in time means what has already been is what you will traverse into. So if you're moving forward through space and backward in time, then that works. But then again, you're still going to have already existed through that area of space that you're traversing. The best way to travel yourself back through time is maybe like the movie Back in Time, where you stop existing at one point and you start existing at a past moment. This is the best way to traverse time because there is no traversing. There is just the jump from one moment to the next. And this allows you essentially to have the ability to be like, if you're going through a time portal, for example, you can have the ability to travel to and from the past in like the game Portal. You will just end up in the past or end up in the future depending on which part of the portal you started off in and where it's leading. So that's something. Yes, the Portal 3 game that they did make and is out there. Go look it up. There's a time portal game. It's a mod, but it's a game. It's real. It might as well be Portal 3. It's the same thing. Who cares? The point is also, in a time reversed vortex, you're not going to see anything in the portal. Light is not able to move backward along the time axis. So the moment you start having light go from through the portal, it goes one way. So they in the past will see you in the future, wave your hand and do everything else, but you will look at that portal and see nothing. Versus that's a time tunnel. A time portal, however, is like a window. You can just pass backward and forward, no problems whatsoever. It's minuscule in comparison to a tunnel, which requires the actual traversal through the tunnel in order to go backward and forward through time. And it has to be calibrated to the exact moment that you want to enter and exit. Otherwise, it's basically like Andromeda warping through space. You have an entry point and an exit point. You must designate it, and that's how you go through, and that's it. Normally, going through like subspace or whatever else stuff, you can't really do it. It doesn't work a lot great and whatever and stuff. I've been noticing a lot of copyright claims on my videos for Minecraft because the music from Minecraft, although it's beautiful, is going to claim all the time, and that's why I leave it in the video, because I'm not gaining any money anyway, so what do I care? But I care because if I didn't have that music in, I would be able to actually monetize the videos. That would be good for everyone involved. But anyhow, so the other idea of simply flashing from your current position to a moment in another point in time is probably the best method to go about. However, the actual implementation of this method is highly speculative, nearly impossible, and requires something like, I don't know, the clicking of heels or the tapping of a... you can't even do entangled particles. They don't causally affect each other. If you could causally affect entangled particles, you tap one side and the other side is where you end up. That's how those type of things happen. But then the particles themselves need to traverse the time necessary, and you don't know where they end up through their journey to the past. Like, they still physically have to go through time, and then you just follow them, assuming you can know when they happened. But the moment you stop looking at them, they're going to just go as far back into the past as they have the ability to go into the past. So you'll end up anywhere. So there's the idea of time manipulative entangled particles, if it even could exist, is not calibratable. It doesn't work easily. Versus if you're able to use some kind of electromagnetism junk to manipulate the front and back portals of things, you can make a time tunnel, and that works. That works in our current idea of space-time curvature. However, I don't believe in space-time curvature, so we can't use that, because time dilation doesn't exist. But time travel can still exist in my idea of how the universe works. It's just not going to be a time tunnel. It's going to be something like sending... Okay. Some kind of electromagnetic spindle, where when you have the light somehow traverse this pathway in a circle, and then once you have that light end up hitting what you want in the past, then something linked to that light pulls you along with it and takes you into the past. So, do you still traverse through regular time? I don't know. The other types of time travel include other dimensions that are relevant to all things, including higher dimension non-Euclidean space, where every space is that weird thing where if you keep on moving forward, you still see everything expanding in front of you. And so if you simply start in whatever direction, you can know where to be, but the map and the display is all weird. And in that geometry of space, technically something like that could happen, and you could make some kind of time machine out of that. But again, this has to do with alternative dimensions that have nothing to do with what we currently are working with. And we cannot even begin to figure out how you would traverse such dimensions, or enter, or exist, or maintain yourself, or anything. It's absolutely just out there in the idea of hypothesis and whatever. It's not real. It's not even science fiction. It's not anything. Or it's maybe science fiction, just absolutely no explanation, no like experiments can happen to give you any idea of how this is even close to being some part of reality. It just doesn't work. Extra dimensional stuff just doesn't work. But that's how Portal does it. It does an extra dimensional thing where the entry point leads to the center of all existence in another dimension, which then you can exit into any other part of existence anywhere instantaneously. And that extra dimensional nonsense and everything else that happens in Half-Life and all of that is stuff that is, again, utilizing other dimensional stuff and has no bearing on reality as we know it, as I'm aware. All these caveats mean that we can't travel through time through any means that we have ever considered in our entire existence. We cannot travel through time whatsoever backwards easily. We can send signals backwards, perhaps, by using some kind of thing that is capable of interactions that traverse backwards through time. This is not something that we've ever witnessed, done, or anything about. There is no evidence about anything to do with that. It has never happened. So, no one is aware of this as a possibility in the current state of reality as we know it. So, we can't transmit signals into the past. We can't move faster than light, according to some idiots. But we can move faster than light. We just need a vortex engine. But moving faster than light does not mean you're going to go backwards in time. That's not how that works. Moving faster and faster and faster doesn't make you backward and backward and backward in time. It just makes you closer to the event's beginning than it would have been, which again, the event where it was is not where it is now. So all of that stuff to be said is just irrelevant to say there's no traversing backward in time easily without some other kind of idea that has never been considered in the history of all ever time, without including some kind of, crazy magic or whatever else. Barring that and extra dimensions we can't reach, time tunnels we can't form, types of interconnected particles, freaking entangled. If you ever want to use the word entangled, will you please just freaking use it correctly, science communicators? They just say it as they seem to have some correlation, and not that they actually have a causal connection. Doesn't matter. None of that's real. No time format has ever been potential to work in those ways whatsoever. Any type of thing. Tachyons doesn't happen. Signals of any sort. Traveling through time in a flash. All this stuff. None of it happens. None of it has happened. And no one has ever conceived of a way to work with time using what we currently actually know, except for the wild idea of a time tunnel, which is still, even if it can work, it can only work from the beginning of the creation of the time tunnel, which involves a structure bigger than a Dyson sphere. So forget about it. Or you have to make matter concentrations like, you know, how we've been using lasers to concentrate energy in a tiny amount of space to make an artificial wormhole, black hole, whatever. People say wormhole, it's wrong. They want to try to make a black hole, and I'm like, okay, good. We'll be eliminated soon. That'd be great. That'll happen. No, it won't be great. It would suck. Whatever. Don't do it.
And you'd be sucked into the black hole like spaghetti.
Yeah. Anyway,